it by hand. I am the luckiest man alive.
And about 3 minutes from now, the flight control team here in Mission Control in Houston, led by Flight Director Allison Bollinger, will be polling the team for a go for launch. She will relay that to her counterpart at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, half a world away. Inside 33 minutes now before launch. We should be receiving from Baikonur about 3 minutes from now a video B-roll package of launch morning activities that the three crew members engaged in before they arrived and at the point that they arrived at the launch pad at Site 31. So we'll be standing by for that. All the launch preparations continue to go well. And again, down at the Kennedy Space Center on Launch Pad 39B, the cryogenic propellant tanking test for the Space Launch System on Pad 39B continues so far. That could, if all goes well, lead to the launch of the Space Launch System on its maiden flight on September 27th.
As well as the inhibits to choose any additional formats or displays on ENPO. We copy. Performed. The accelerometer is on. We copy.
As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, it is an ideal evening for launch for the three crew members to the International Space Station. The temperature in Baikonur is about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, not a cloud in the sky. The launch to occur about 7 minutes after sunset. It should be spectacular as the Soyuz arcs out to the northeast, headed for the International Space Station. This is a two-orbit rendezvous today, precisely calculated. It will take just over 3 hours for Rubio, Prokopiev, and Patelin to reach their destination through a series of pre-programmed automated engine firings that will first elevate and increase their altitude toward the station after third stage separation on the Soyuz booster and separation of the Soyuz spacecraft from the third stage. The stair-step fashion that they will undertake to reach the vicinity of the International Space Station will be undertaken through a series of so-called impulse burns of the Soyuz engine that will steadily close the gap between themselves and the international outpost over the 3-hour plus period that will follow liftoff.
Рождения такие наши души пахнут маслом, крылья синим, звезды красным. Как небо нам не любить, одно для нас. Там бумажные голуби и ракеты на Марс. Как небо благодарит, небо учит нас.
And here's our video B-roll feed from earlier today, launch day for the three crew members beginning several hours ago after they were awakened at their Cosmonaut Hotel crew quarters to begin final pre-launch activities. The crew departed the Cosmonaut Hotel and boarded a bus for their 40-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at Building 254 inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome. You see them in their traditional and familiar walkout from the Cosmonaut Hotel, the backup crew following them, Oleg Kononenko, Laurel O'Hara, Nikolai Chubb. In the parking lot to the Cosmonaut Hotel, the usual crowd of well-wishers. And you see Frank Rubio on the right, Sergei Prokopiev in the middle, Dmitry Petelin on the left. You're hearing is being piped into the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft from engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. This is a video that was received and acquired several hours ago at the integration and suit-up facility at the Baikonur Cosmodrome as Sergei Prokopiev first, then Dmitry Petelin underwent leak checks to their Soyuz Sokol launch and entry suits, and then had an opportunity to exchange final remarks with their families. As you'll see a short time from now, also exchanging a final opportunity for remarks with NASA and Roscosmos managers. And Frank Rubio settling in several hours ago for the leak checks on his SOCA launch and entry suit. Part of the NASA delegation in the audience there across the protective pane of glass to maintain quarantine restrictions for the crew. Johnson Space Center Deputy Director Steve Kerner, the ISS Program Manager Joel Montalbano, Reed Wiseman, NASA's Chief Astronaut, Norm Knight, the Director of Flight Operations here at the Johnson Space Center, Ken Bowersox, the NASA Deputy Associate Administrator, also on hand in Baikonur for today's launch. Again, the three crew members who are now strapped inside their Soyuz spacecraft, exchanging well wishes with their family members across the protective pane of glass. And with the family members having had an opportunity to talk to the crew members, it was time for Roscosmos and NASA managers to exchange final well wishes with the crew. You see at the top of your screen Sergei Krikalev, who flew twice on space shuttle missions to the International Space Station. This exchange of pleasantries between the crew and the Roscosmos managers essentially amounts to a report on the readiness of the vehicle for launch and final well wishes before the crew departs the integration building to head for the launch pad itself. And there's Ken Bowersox, former astronaut and NASA's Deputy Associate Administrator, and Joel Montalbano, the ISS Program Manager, offering their final well wishes for a successful launch that is now just 18 minutes and 50 seconds away. With the pleasantries having been completed, the crew members then left the Site 254 integration building. And you'll see in a moment Prokopiev, the Soyuz commander, reporting that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad. With that, the trio boarded their bus about 3.5 hours ago for the ride to Launch Site 31, a trip that took almost 1 hour to complete. And here you see the bus with the crew arriving at the pad. The crew climbing a few stairs that you'll see in a moment, waving goodbye to well-wishers and entering the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket to board their spacecraft, which they've now been aboard for the past 2+ hours.
Можно ли мечтать о большем? Могучий космический корабль унесет меня в далекие просторы Вселенной. Сами понимаете. Можно ли мечтать...
Again, this is video that was taken several hours ago as the 3 crew members arrived at Launch Site 31 at the launch pad, having an opportunity to say goodbye one final time to well-wishers at the pad, as well as managers from NASA and Roscosmos, before boarding the elevator at the pad for the ride up to the top of the Soyuz 2.1A booster to board their spacecraft, which they've now been aboard for a little over 2 hours. And we are now back live with a view of the Soyuz MS-22 rocket on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Launch is scheduled just 14.5 minutes from now at 8:54 and 49 seconds a.m. Central Time, 6:54 and 49 seconds p.m. in Baikonur, about 7 minutes after sunset. Atop the 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats in the descent module of the Soyuz, NASA's Frank Rubio, along with Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin of Roscosmos. As mentioned earlier, Prokopiev, the Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the descent module of the Soyuz MS-22, Petelin to his left and Rubio to his right. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying over northwest Uzbekistan. The station and the Expedition 67 crew will pass directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome 1 minute, 58 seconds after launch, and will leapfrog past the ascending Soyuz vehicle as it heads to orbit. 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down, and the Soyuz will separate from its launch vehicle in a preliminary orbit, deploying its solar arrays and its navigational antennas. At that point, the 3 crew members will be trailing the space station by about 1,000 miles. The chase will begin, resulting in a docking to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station at 12:11 p.m. Central Time today.
Okay, hello.
As you saw earlier, a NASA delegation is in Baikonur at this hour, preparing to watch the launch of the crew to the International Space Station. NASA's Deputy Associate Administrator Ken Bowersox, ISS Program Manager Joel Montalbano, Johnson Space Center Deputy Director Steve Kerner, Norm Knight, the Director of Flight Operations here at the Johnson Space Center, and NASA's Chief Astronaut Reid Wiseman, all in Baikonur to watch Frank Rubio begin his mission, and NASA Public Affairs Officer Dan Hewitt, who filed this report a short time ago.
Thanks, Rob, and greetings from Baikonur. As you said, a small group of medical and support personnel, along with some NASA leadership, are on hand here in Kazakhstan to support Frank's launch today. The delegation includes NASA's International Space Station Program Manager Joel Montalbano, and he sat on the State Commission on Tuesday to give formal approval to move forward with launch. Several of our key personnel, including our chief astronaut, Reid Wiseman, have been living in quarantine alongside Rubio just during all of his final preparations here, which have all continued along smoothly. It's been clear skies throughout the week's events and is shaping up to be picturesque with liftoff coming in the twilight hours here at the Cosmodrome. We're all gathered within sight of the launch pad and have some additional personnel staged with SAR forces to support any contingency situations. Now, Rubio's looking to join his 2017 astronaut class colleagues Jessica Watkins and Bob Hines on board the station, and he's had fellow classmate Laurel O'Hara here on hand as part of the backup crew in advance of her own launch next spring. So everything remains go here in Baikonur. Good luck to the crew of Soyuz MS-22, and I'll hand it back over to Rob in Mission Control Houston to continue with the countdown.
Thanks, Dan. Dan Hewitt, who's at the viewing site just a couple of miles away from.
फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल आप सभी का स्वागत है एक और लाइव स्ट्रीम में। हम लोग लाइव हैं यहाँ पे। आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे और हम देखेंगे सोयूज़ रॉकेट का लॉन्च, जिसमें 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट ISS पे जा रहे हैं, इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन पे। तो अभी लगभग 10 मिनट के अंदर लॉन्च होने वाला है। तो उन 10 मिनट में हम लोग जान लेते हैं इस मिशन का प्रोफाइल क्या है और डिटेल्स क्या क्या है इस मिशन के बारे में। तो ये रसिया से लॉन्च किया जा रहा है, कजाकिस्तान से लॉन्च किया जा रहा है। जिस रॉकेट के मदद से लॉन्च किया जा रहा है उस रॉकेट का नाम है सोयूज़ 2.1A। दिस इज़ द rocket which shown in front of you, the picture form। तो इसमें 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट ISS पे जा रहे हैं, इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन। ओके, अगले 10 मिनट में लॉन्च होगा। 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट जा रहे हैं इसमें। अगर डिटेल्स की बात करें तो लॉन्च साइट है लॉन्च कॉम्प्लेक्स 31/6 बैकनूर कॉस्मोड्रोन, कजाकिस्तान से लॉन्च किया जा रहा है। रॉकेट का नाम है सोयूज़ 2.1A एंड रॉस्कोस्मोस रशिया की स्पेस कंपनी है, उनकी मदद से लॉन्च किया जा रहा है। क्रूड मिशन है इसमें, 3 क्रूड मिशन जा रहे हैं ISS पे, इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन में। कितने दिन के लिए जा रहे हैं? लगभग 188 डे, एग्जैक्ट 188 डेज़ के लिए जा रहे हैं। ये अभी जा रहे हैं, लौटेंगे ये 28 मार्च ऑफ 2023 में। और अगर पूरे पेलोड की बात करें तो 7000 kg का ये पेलोड जा रहा है ISS पे। और अब डिटेल्स बात करते हैं सोयूज़ रॉकेट के डिटेल्स के बारे में। तो सोयूज़ रॉकेट 3 स्टेज रॉकेट है, जिसमें 4 स्ट्रैप बूस्टर लगे हुए हैं, लिक्विड ऑक्सीजन और लिक्विड RP1 पे चलते हैं। फिर सेकंड स्टेज है जो मेन कोर है, फिर थर्ड स्टेज है। और अगर बात करें 4 बूस्टर की, पूरे रॉकेट में RP1 और लिक्विड ऑक्सीजन का यूज़ किया जाता है।
phase angle for launch for orbital insertion that will ensure the beginning of a 2-orbit, 3+ hour rendezvous to reach the International Space Station. And during the Soyuz climb to orbit, the ISS will leapfrog ahead of Soyuz, and Soyuz will then be catching up to the International Space Station through a series of pre-programmed rendezvous burns.
बैकग्राउंड में जो गाने बज रहे हैं वो एस्ट्रोनॉट के लिए बजाए जा रहे हैं, जो एस्ट्रोनॉट इस समय रॉकेट के ऊपर पेलोड की जगह पे बैठे हुए हैं। उस स्पेसक्राफ्ट का नाम है सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट। Okay, they are ready for launch.
Launch controllers in Baikonur that everything is in readiness aboard the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft. You see the booster on the launch pad. Again, the two umbilical towers that are buttressed up against the Soyuz, the first will retract at about the T-minus 30 or 35-second mark. The second of those two umbilicals will retract at about the 12-second mark before launch, initiating the auto sequence start for engine ignition and ultimately for liftoff. Inside 6.5 minutes from launch, a launch key has been inserted in the launch bunker. This is a real key that transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. And launch controllers down at Baikonur reporting that the range is clear, the Soyuz rocket ready to begin its journey.
Launch key inserted.
Okay. Okay, everyone ready for the launch.
Members strapped into their seats in the center section of the descent module have closed their visors for launch. Sergei Prokopyev reporting that everything is in readiness on board the Soyuz, flanked to his right by NASA's Frank Rubio and to his left by Roscosmos cosmonaut Dmitry Petelin. 5.5 minutes until launch. Onboard systems will be switching to onboard control. The commander's cockpit displays now activated.
Everything looks fine.
Passing now the 5-minute mark into the countdown.
Within a 5 minutes, they are launching the Soyuz rocket.
Recorders in the launch control center now activated. They will be recording telemetry from the launch vehicle during liftoff and its climb to orbit. The sun setting on the Central Asian desert, everything in readiness for launch at 8:54 and 49 seconds a.m. Central Time, 6:54 and 49 seconds p.m. Baikonur time.
Okay.
The Soyuz 2.1A booster fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines now being purged with nitrogen to fireproof them, to remove vapors of fuel and oxidizer for the final minutes of the countdown.
पूरे टोटल हाइट की बात करें तो इस रॉकेट के 46.3 मीटर लॉन्ग है।
Will be placed in the drainage position. The valves through which evaporated or gaseous oxygen escapes from the fuel tanks into the atmosphere are closed as the fuel begins to drain back into the tanks. At the same time, the valves providing liquid oxygen to replenish those tanks will be lost by the natural boil-off or evaporation. Coming up on the T-minus 3-minute mark in the count.
Okay, T-minus 3 minute.
drainage has now been completed. T-minus 2 minutes 45 seconds until launch. The fuel and oxidizer tanks now being pressurized to optimize fuel flow to provide additional structural rigidity to the launch vehicle on the pad.
ओके 2 मिनट में लॉन्च होने वाले हैं ISS के लिए। देखते हैं सक्सेसफुल रहे।
Booster propellant tank pressurization initiated.
Tank pressurization underway. Everything in good shape as we approach the T-minus 2 minute mark in the count.
The vehicle is nominal. Copy.
Passing through 2 minutes, coming up on the termination of the ground propellant feed to the Soyuz booster. T-minus 1 minute 30 seconds until launch. The Soyuz about to go on internal power. This in-cabin view showing at the bottom of your screen Sergei Prokopiev, the Soyuz commander, and at the top of your screen Dmitry Petelin, Frank Rubio on the right of Prokopiev out of the field of view here. We are now 50 seconds from launch.
Okay.
Vehicle switch to internal power. First umbilical tower separation.
First umbilical should be retracting, and there it goes. The second umbilical will retract at about the T-minus 15 second mark.
Go, 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 Soyuz to the ISS rocket.
The second umbilical has retracted. This will initiate the auto sequence start. T-minus 10 seconds and counting. We have engine start.
Umbilical tower separation.
Turbo pumps coming up to flight speed.
Turbo pumps, light speed,
and liftoff.
Okay, liftoff.
Sunset start to the mission of Rubio, Prokopiev, and Petelin to the International Space Station.
Successfully liftoff.
10 seconds. Flight is nominal.
Good first stage performance reported from the blockhouse at Baikonur. The Soyuz delivering 930,000 pounds of thrust from its 4 boosters and single engine.
L plus 20, L plus 20.
Arcing out to the northeast from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
फर्स्ट स्टेज में जो इंजन लगा हुआ है इसका नाम है RD-1074 इंजन, जो 4 स्ट्रैप बूस्टर है। वो लगभग 2 मिनट तक जलेंगे, उसके बाद वो डिटैच हो जाएंगे रॉकेट के। वो डिटैच जो प्रोसेस होता है वो काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग होता है। उस प्रोसेस का नाम रॉस्कोस्मॉस ने रखा है कोरोलिव क्रॉस।
Velocity now about 1100 miles per hour. Yaw pitch and roll program all reported to be nominal from the blockhouse at Baikonur.
Yeah, everything is nominal right now.
Crew is feeling well.
Prokopiev reporting the crew is feeling well. Coming up on the 1 minute 20 second mark into the flight. Now passing through the area of maximum dynamic pressure.
Okay, max Q पार कर रहा है।
L plus 80 parameters are nominal.
One minute 35 seconds into the flight.
अभी कुछ सेकंड में।
Parameter is above nominal.
Okay.
Copy casual parameter of nominal. Correct? Affirmative.
ओके, फर्स्ट स्टेज का लगभग टाइम ख़त्म होने वाला है, अब डिटैच होगा। जस्ट यस, हो गए, डिटैच हो गए चारों स्ट्रैप बूस्टर।
Jettison confirmed.
And we've had first stage separation.
फर्स्ट स्टेज सेपरेशन, फर्स्ट स्टेज का अगर लेंथ की बात करें तो लगभग 19.4 मीटर लेंथ है
Pressure
और
parameter is nominal.
2.7 मीटर का डायमीटर है। ये 4 स्ट्रैप बूस्टर लगे हुए हैं कोर मेन में।
Is nominal.
ये जो आपको स्क्रीन पर दिख रहा होगा काफ़ी ब्यूटीफुल लगता है।
358.
सोयूज़ रॉकेट का ये सबसे बेस्ट है। इस प्रोसेस को बोलते हैं, इन्होंने नाम लिखा कोरोलिव क्रॉस, अ इंटरेस्टिंग नेम गिवन बाय द रोस्कोस्मोस
Nominally.
to that process
The
where the
second stage engine
first
is
stage
operating normally now.
detached from the core
From the
charge.
upper stage of the Soyuz booster as it continues to climb uphill.
100.
Launch shroud now has been jettisoned.
ओके, फिर से डिटेल में बात करते हैं कि इस रॉकेट में और इस मिशन में क्या किया गया है। इस मिशन में लॉन्च किए गए हैं 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट जो ISS पे जाएंगे, इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन पे, और सोयूज़ रॉकेट की मदद से लॉन्च किया गया। और लॉन्च साइट है जहाँ से लॉन्च किया गया है वो कजाकिस्तान से। ये लगभग 188 डेज़ का मिशन रहेगा जिसमें 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट 6 महीनों के लिए ISS पे रहेंगे फिर से, तो वो वापस लौटेंगे लगभग 28 मार्च 2023 में। ये ओवरव्यू रहा मिशन में ये क्या लॉन्च किया जा रहा है।
See indication controlled descent available vehicle is nominal. Copy indication is on.
एवरीथिंग लुक्स
Good
नॉर्मल।
reports, so far. The flight reported as nominal as we approach the 4-minute mark into the flight.
Pressure reached 105, 1500 for a moment. Copy.
Second stage engine continues to burn as planned as we approach the 4-minute 15-second mark into the flight. About
ओके,
halfway
सेकेंड
through
स्टेज
powered flight
में जो
now.
इंजन लगा हुआ है उसका नाम है RD-108A। इसमें लिक्विड ऑक्सीजन और RP1 का यूज़ किया गया है। इस सोयूज़ रॉकेट में हर जगह तीनों स्टेज में लिक्विड ऑक्सीजन और RP1 फ्यूल का यूज़ किया गया है।
Seconds away from second
बस
stage
इंजन
separation
अलग अलग है,
and the
स्टेज 1 में
initial third
अलग
stage
इंजन है, स्टेज 2 में अलग इंजन है, स्टेज 3 में अलग इंजन है।
L+270 parameters are nominal.
ये कैमरा एंगल रॉकेट से ऑन बोर्ड कैमरा है।
Second stage separation confirmed.
ओके, सक्सेसफुली सेकंड स्टेज सेपरेट हो गया है फ्रॉम द सोयूज़ रॉकेट।
Soyuz now climbing to orbit on the singular power of its third stage engine. 5 minutes, 12 seconds into the flight, about 3.5 minutes of powered flight remaining.
L+310. Launch vehicle is stable. Vehicle is nominal. Crew is feeling well.
Prokopiev reports that the crew is doing well. This third stage engine providing 67,000 pounds of thrust for the remaining 3 minutes of powered flight.
That's interesting. This is the 7th rocket launch of Soyuz 2.1A in 2022. ये 7वीं बार लॉन्च किया जा रहा है सोयूज़ रॉकेट को। सोयूज़ रॉकेट
350.
काफ़ी वर्सेटाइल, काफ़ी अच्छा रॉकेट माना जाता है क्योंकि ये ISS पे कार्गो सप्लाई पहुंचाने के लिए, क्रू मेंबर पहुंचाने के लिए और कमर्शियल और नॉन कमर्शियल और मिलिट्री सैटेलाइट को ऑर्बिट भेजने में भी काम आता है।
Good roll, pitch, and yaw reported. Good structural stability reported.
Seconds, the engine of the third phase is working nominally. For 400 seconds, the stabilization of the article is
और एक और इंटरेस्टिंग बात इस रॉकेट का कि इसमें इग्निशन के लिए बाहर से इग्नाइट किया जाता है इसे। ओके 1 मिनट। हाँ, बाहर से इग्नाइट किया जाता है, इसका मतलब ये है कि
At the time of third stage shutdown and spacecraft separation, control of the Soyuz vehicle through docking will transition to the flight control team at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. 7 minutes, 30 seconds into the flight. Again, this view from a camera on the upper stage of the Soyuz booster, which should also provide us a view of the solar array deploy.
ओके, ये कैमरा सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट के बारे में भी डिस्कस करेंगे। हाँ, सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट के बारे में डिस्कस कर लेते हैं। तो जो रॉकेट अभी लॉन्च किया गया है सोयूज रॉकेट, जिसमें भेजा जाता है कभी कभी आईएसएस पे क्रू मेंबर और कभी कभी कार्गो सप्लाई भेजा जाता है। तो जब कार्गो सप्लाई भेजा जाता है तो जो स्पेसक्राफ्ट यूज़ किया जाता है वो सोयूज प्रोग्रेस नाम का एक कैप्सूल बनाया जाता है, उसमें भेजा जाता है। और जब क्रू मेंबर को भेजा जाता है तो सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट को भेजा जाता है। तो इस पूरे होस्टिंग में इन्होंने हर बार सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट का नाम लिया गया, क्योंकि इसमें कार्गो नहीं भेजा जा रहा है, इसमें क्रू मेंबर भेजा जा रहा है, इसलिए सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट है। दिस इज़ द टर्मिनोलॉजी एंड दिस इज़ द डिफरेंस भी है, क्योंकि सोयूज कैप्सूल को वापस भी आना पड़ता है। जब 6 महीने बाद वो वापस आएंगे तो इसी कैप्सूल की मदद से आएंगे। और जो प्रोग्रेस है जिसमें कार्गो सप्लाई किया जाता है, तो कार्गो के लिए कोई खाना फूड जो भी वो भेजा जाता है आईएसएस पे, वो वहाँ से कलेक्ट कर लेते हैं। फिर इस जो कार्गो ले गया है उसका नाम रहता है प्रोग्रेस कैप्सूल, उसे फिर अपर एटमॉस्फेयर में जला दिया जाता है। ओके, थर्ड स्टेज सेपरेट हो गया फ्रॉम द सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट।
Outside Moscow. Outside Moscow.
And we now have confirmation of a perfect solar array and navigational antenna deploy. The Soyuz MS-22 now in its preliminary orbit, and the chase has begun to catch up to the International Space Station, with docking planned just 3 hours from now after a 2-orbit journey. Docking scheduled at 12:11 p.m.
Okay.
Central Time.
Now सक्सेसफुली मिशन हो गया है, जिसमें सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट अलग हो गया थर्ड स्टेज से। अब लगभग 3 घंटे के बाद ये इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन से डॉक करेगा, जिसमें 2 बार ये अर्थ के ऑर्बिट करेगा। उसके बाद ये डॉक हो जाएगा सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट, जिसमें 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट हैं। एस्ट्रोनॉट बोलना नहीं चाहिए, रसिया से लॉन्च किया जाए तो रैकोनॉट्स, आई थिंक राइकोनॉट भूल गया मैं उनको, रॉस्कोनॉट बोला जाता है शायद। जैसे यूएस में भेजा जाता है तो एस्ट्रोनॉट बोला जाता है, अगर इंडियन कोई भेजता है अपना स्पेस इंसान ऑर्बिट में तो उसे वेमोनॉट्स बोलेंगे। वैसे चाइना का टाइकोनॉट्स बोलते हैं, तो वैसे ही रसिया का रोकोनॉट्स, या फिर मैं भूल गया, ध्यान नहीं है, सॉरी फॉर दैट। ओके, एवरीथिंग इज़ नॉमिनल एंड ये मिशन सक्सेसफुल रहा। लास्ट में एक बार फिर से डिस्कस कर लेते हैं इसमें क्या हुआ। इसमें सोयूज रॉकेट की मदद से 3 एस्ट्रोनॉट को आईएसएस इंटरनेशनल स्पेस स्टेशन पर भेजा गया है 6 महीनों के लिए रिसर्च वर्क करने के लिए, जिसे लॉन्च किया गया है कजाकिस्तान में। और ये अभी का अपडेट ये है कि सक्सेसफुली थर्ड स्टेज से सेपरेट हो गया है सोयूज स्पेसक्राफ्ट। अगले 3 घंटे में ऑर्बिट करते हुए ये आईएसएस पे डॉक कर दिया जाएगा। तो आज के लिए बस इतना ही। अगर आपने पूरा वीडियो देखा उसके लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। तो आज हम इस स्ट्रीम को एंड करते हैं। थोड़ा सा देख लेते हैं डिटेल्स के बारे में अगर कुछ आ रहा है तो।
Control Houston, back here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room. The Orbit 2 team of flight controllers now proceeding on to monitor the progress of the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft to the International Space Station. with docking scheduled just a little over 3 hours from now. The launch, as you just saw, occurred on time at 8:54 and 49 seconds a.m. Central Time.
Copy.
6:54 and 49 seconds p.m. at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, just a few minutes after sunset.
Raikonauts, I think उन्होंने बोला Raikonauts.
Activities occurred on time and were perfectly normal. A perfect ascent to orbit, third stage shutdown occurring 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, right on time, enabling the three crew members on board the Soyuz spacecraft, Frank Rubio, Dmitry Petelin, and the Soyuz commander Sergei Prokopyev, to begin all the procedures that will lead towards an automated rendezvous and docking to the Rosviet module of the International Space Station at 12:11 p.m. Central Time. Our docking coverage will
Okay.
begin a little over 2 hours from now at 11:15 a.m. Central, 12:15 p.m. Eastern Time on the public channel. Meanwhile, we're going to return the public channel to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where the cryogenic tanking test of the Space Launch System is continuing out on Launch Pad 39B. So we have a double dip for you today, the Soyuz launch and upcoming rendezvous and docking of the three new residents of the International Space Station, and the cryogenic tanking test that, if successful, could lead to a launch, the maiden launch of the Space Launch System on September 27th. For now, that'll wrap up our coverage of the launch of Soyuz MS-22 to the International Space Station. We'll see you back here in 2 hours for the rendezvous and docking coverage. In the
Okay.
meantime, this is Mission Control Houston.
ओके, नासा ने बंद कर दिया है। अब वो 2 घंटे बाद फिर से लाइव स्ट्रीम करेंगे जहाँ पे दिखाएंगे डॉकिंग का। तो हम भी आज के लिए विदा लेते हैं। आज के लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया अगर आपने ज्वाइन किया, और अगर आपने पूरा वीडियो देखा तो उसके लिए बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। थैंक यू सो मच। अगला हम लॉन्च वीडियो देखेंगे 24 तारीख को, जहाँ पे लॉन्च होगा यूएलए के तरफ से, उसको कवरेज करेंगे और आशा करते हैं कि आप फिर भी ज्वाइन करेंगे। तो आज के लिए इतना ही, फिर मिलते हैं कुछ नए इंटरेस्टिंग लॉन्चेस के साथ। थैंक यू सो मच वंस अगेन, बाय बाय।